Well, next up is my interview with Michel Weatherall. And I just want to mention that this was done on Zoom, and so the sound's a little bit different, but it's good. You'll hear it. You'll be able to hear it just fine. Here we go. What better time to read than to be stuck in isolation during a pandemic? Local author, publisher Michel Weatherall has just the thing for you, a book of stories written by 14 Ottawa authors. The book is entitled Thin Places, and I thought it would be great to have a chat with Michel and let you listen in. So we Zoomed, and here's my conversation with Michel.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi, Michel.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good.
First of all, maybe I'll get you to talk a little bit about yourself, including some of your awards.
Well, I can tie it into this. Interesting. I mean, it's funny that you say the awards. In 2020, which would have been the end of 2019, I did win the Faces of Ottawa Awards for favorite author and publisher. So I kind of walked into 2020 on fire thinking, woohoo, this is going to be great. And then the COVID-19 hit and almost everything shut down. So, we're kind of trying to figure out how we're going to navigate that.
What normally would that mean? Like, is there a role that comes out of that?
Oh, not really. I mean, at the end of the day, the Faces of Ottawa Awards, it's a popularity. It's not really based on merit or much beyond that. But the thing that's interesting with those kinds of awards is, depending on how you market them, is the very first time I was nominated, which was 3 years ago, the first, I think it was a Chapters book signing I did, it doubled the sales. And it's just because of something like that. Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
I always call it a gold sticker because I literally have gold stickers printed to put on the covers of my books. And hey, whatever held market, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So when was your first book published? How long have you been doing this?
That's always a neat question. There's two answers. I guess ultimately, once a writer, always a writer. I don't ever remember a time not writing in one way or another. The first book I published was The Symbiote, which was published in 2015, but it was written about 30 years ago.
Wow.
It sat in a drawer for a long, long time. And then it was actually meant to be part of a trilogy. The second part to that was called The Hunt, and it was about half written at that same time. So it was finished and published in 2016, and the finale for the whole original trilogy was supposed to be Necropolis, which was written and published also in 2016. I didn't end it the way I wanted it to. I could have, but it would have been really forced, would have been kind of artificial. And then I came up with this idea in 2017 of a whole bunch. Well, the story arc of the trilogy is quite large. There's a lot of secondary incidental characters that, I'll be honest with you, we really never find out what happens to them. And I've got a slew of emails from people. Everybody had their favorite, what happened to so-and-so, what happened to so-and-so. And this idea over a year grew to have a series of short stories or vignettes that would all tie into one book, which ended up being the Refuse Chronicles, which it's ended up being it's 19 short stories or novelettes. They all revisit these secondary characters, but they tie together to tell an overall story, and they wrap up the entire series.
Wow. So, and is this all local authors? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, not the Refuse Chronicles. Chronicles, that's all mine. And it wraps up that Symbiote series. It finishes that series completely. And it does end the way I had initially wanted it to end. And then what I had done was, it sounds silly, but trilogies are easier to sell than 4 books are. So what I had done was, I was never happy with the cover of the second book, all 3 different variations of it. And it was last year, it was year before last year, I was invited to be a celebrity judge at the beauty pageant. And one of the runners up, Mary Ellen Moore, I ended up becoming good friends with her. When I first saw her, she was the spitting image of one of the characters I thought in the book. And it's amazing to see what you thought was fictitious in your own mind standing in front of you. It was at that time when I was also playing with releasing a 30th anniversary edition of it, which she ended up being the face of Nadia on the cover of that book. And that one ends up being the first 2 books together. So we went back to a trilogy again. So the Symbiote series is back to a 3-book series once again.
That's interesting. Do you find that writing a trilogy is different than a series?
In a way it is. one of the things I wanted to do at the end, like I said, with the original ending I had planned for Necropolis, was it would have ended the series off, and I didn't use it, and I ended up using it at the end of the Refuse Chronicles. But I wanted to finish it off because the story nature of the Symbiote series is so large that I could have just kept writing, and I never wanted to become a one-trick pony. The point where I said I need to finish it, and I'm not going to give a lot of ways, but the way the Refuse Chronicles ends, it's done. It's over.
Well,
there's not much to be continued from it.
So how did Thin Places come about?
I've been doing this as a local author for about 5 years now, and I think one of the coolest things is the people you meet, whether it's the readers or other authors, or just Ottawa has a huge assortment of really awesome people. But the one thing I always noticed the more and more I got into this was I think there's a huge literary talent in this city, massive amount of talent here. And it's just a matter of, some people, they don't know how to get it out. They don't know how to do the venues. And I'll be the first one to admit a big factor in self-publishing your work is fear. Because it's scary putting yourself out there. It really is. And the more and more I saw these people in the last couple of years, I've been invited to speak at writers groups. I've started thinking there's got to be a venue to do this with, and Thin Places was going to be it. Now, the premise behind Thin Places was it was supposed to be an anthology of local Ottawa authors. We ended up getting 14. And the only restrictions I put in place was there was a word count as well, like their short stories. But it had to deal with the topic of parallel universes or alternate realities, but it didn't have to be sci-fi. There could have been a whole, I love cross-genre storylines. I know this isn't a book, but in the movie Revolving Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow, it's cool because I think it's in New York City. She's racing to catch a subway to go home, and she misses it. And it's when you're watching the movie, it's like, it's kind of confusing in the beginning because you're watching it again. She's racing to catch a subway, but she catches it. And it follows two storylines of what happens when she catches it and what happens when she doesn't catch it. Now, the premise behind it is totally sci-fi. It deals with alternate universes. But it's a romance. It has nothing to do with science fiction at all. So there's a huge potential with those cross-genre there as well. And, some of the stuff in this particular collection, the genres are everywhere. I mean, we have, there's drama, there's science fiction, there's a couple of comedy, cosmic horror, fantasy, there's a poem in there, dystopian, there's some that are very whimsical and even horror. And I like that. It brings a lot to the table. But the idea behind it was to get local authors out, a venue to get their names out. Some of them were, we have a few award-winning authors, actually. Genevieve Georgette and Dr. Ian Prattis has short stories in it. We have a handful of, established authors that are already in print. Laurie Stewart, Jameson Wolfe, Jana Begovic, Bridget Bourlet, John W. Partington, and John C. Nash. And then we have a few other ones that actually, this is the first time they've been published. And, I'll be honest, one of my favorite stories comes from one of them that's never been published before.
That's great.
It's a great collection. The idea behind this was it is going to go to print, and that's still the plan. But with the lockdown and the quarantines and everything else going on, that kind of got parked for the time being. And one of the way this is structured, because although Broken Keys Publishing, which is my publishing company, did put it out, the way it's going to function financially is the authors that are contributed have the opportunity to buy books of their own at cost and then selling them for the profit. That's where they're going to make their money. And if they want to market it, that's awesome. And if they just want a couple of copies for themselves or friends, that's awesome too. But that never really got off the ground because of what's going on. One of the things that I did decide to do that release it as an ebook, one of the things with what I see going on with the pandemic right now is outside of the obvious problems with the financial, people are going to be facing financial hardship and even the sickness and everything else, is I think we are going to see a lot of fear. This isolation is going to contribute hugely to mental illness. And, it's something I think we're going to see come up, but I think it's happening right now. I think it's just happening in silence. So part of the plan was 100% of the proceeds of the ebook is going to be donated to Shadow Ottawa. Shadow Ottawa is a local charity in the city itself. And Bridget Burley I know her as well, and she's the founder and president of it. Why not? We can do good here, right? Yeah. We can change things. We can make things a better place. Like I said, what really I like a lot about Thin Places is all the authors are from Ottawa. The publisher is an Ottawa-based publishing company. The editor that worked with me, Nancy LaFlamme, she's from Ottawa. I got Cody Jeffries to write the foreword to it. Everything about this is based in Ottawa, and that's one of the things I really wanted to focus on. This is this city's book.
That is fantastic. I love that. I do a lot of work with local musicians as well in community type events. So I kind of get the feeling of how neat it is, to do something like that. And like you, we give the money to the food bank. When you try to split the proceeds between 14 people, it becomes a better feeling to just give it to somebody who needs it. Eh?
Yeah. Well, there's also, for an ebook, it becomes that much more difficult because it's more complicated. And I never went into this particularly looking for myself to make a profit off of it. But then we see the situation where, there's going to be some revenue generated. And so what do you do with it? And I think that's the obvious answer. And like I said, I see with this COVID-19, there's going to be a lot of mental illness and mental health issues coming out of this because this isolation is going to hurt people. Yeah,
I'm starting to see it already, especially with people who already suffer from anxiety or that type of thing, and it's tough. So in terms of the book, Thin Lines, what should people know right now?
What we're doing is we're promoting the ebook now, and then there's a couple avenues to finding it. One of the simplest ways to go is to Amazon.ca and just look for Thin Places, the Ottawan Anthology, and another one. Hopefully, we can put it in the information following the on-demand post. It's just a link. It's just a series of letters, but it brings you to a website that offers about, I think, half a dozen different platforms. So whatever person's choice of ebook is, it's all there.
Well, super. And you had a song picked out. I asked you to come up with a song that you'd like to sort of end this conversation with, and so maybe you'd introduce it for me.
And the song is Mad World. It's one of the theme songs from the movie Donnie Darko.
And why did you pick that song?
It was, when you asked me that, it was a tough question because there's a lot of music that comes to mind, but there's something about it that, to me, always, well, I guess the underlying theme behind the movie Donnie Darko is, they call it a tangent universe, but it is an alternate universe. It's not the world we know. And it kind of ties into the theme because that is the one theme behind all these short stories. They deal with alternate realities, alternate universes.
Ah, okay. Well, that's the answer. Thanks so much for zooming in this morning, and I hope we meet again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All around me are familiar faces, worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for the daily races, going nowhere, going nowhere. Their tears are filling up their glasses, no expression, no expression. Hide my head, I wanna drown my sorrow. No tomorrow, no tomorrow. And I find it kinda funny, I find it kinda sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Children waiting for the day they feel good. Watch my lesson. Look right through me. Look right through me. And I find it kind of funny. I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you. I find it hard to take. The people run in circles. It's a very, very